We're going to back up a step here from where we left off with Blood because this episode and the next one go hand in hand. This is the second episode of Season 2, so the X-Files are still shut down, and at the moment Mulder is stuck doing crap work, but not as crappy as the poor Russian guys in this transport. It's not revealed yet, but these guys are hauling, or were hauling, or maybe it was just the boat hauling. It's not quite clear in here. There was stuff from Chernobyl on the boat at some point. It could be on board right now. That would explain why they are currently traveling to New Jersey. But first, let's show some of my home movies. I'm having flashbacks. So to deal with this threat is a guy named Dmitri who has to crawl inside and clear out whatever is blocking the tube so it can be purged. But this being the X-Files, something unseen grabs him and, despite his co-workers' best efforts, he's pulled inside and lost. Soon Mulder, who's hard at work, saving the world from terrorists or whatever, is called away by Skinner to look into a dead guy found in a sewer. Mulder obviously doesn't know it, but this body is Dmitri, and Mulder's so pissed off with this case of dead guy in sewer that he insists on being let in to talk to Skinner right this second.
It's kind of hard to make an appointment when you're up to your ass in raw sewage being jerked from one meaningless assignment to another.
Excuse me?
What's my next punishment? Scrubbing the bathroom floors with a toothbrush?
No, you don't want to make a scene in front of an audience. Yeah, that audience. Whoopsie.
Agent Mulder, will you please inform the room as to why you regard your homicide case in New Jersey as meaningless?
I hope you brought enough conspiracy for everyone, Mulder. He's not happy with his crap assignments, and this, the kind of case that the FBI would normally just leave to local authorities, is just the final insult. But Skinner says to piss off and solve the case, or there'll be no chocolate milk later. Mulder meets up with Scully so he can bitch about them closing the X-Files, and she finally volunteers to help out by checking out the dead guy for him. But Mulder has other plans.
I'm thinking about leaving.
The Bureau? What would you do?
Pursue my work in the paranormal somehow.
Pursue your work, sure. And how are you going to support yourself doing that, Mulder, huh? It's not like being a conspiracy theorist is going to make a ton of money from everyone who buys into it. I'd like to take this opportunity to recount my own personal experiences with alien abduction. Yes, I too have suffered this horrible fate. I was gone for 2 weeks, although it was only 2 of your Earth minutes when I was taken, during which time they moved my belly button for science. I will be happy to answer all your questions while being comped at a super expensive hotel convention. Just contact my agent to set it up. So Scully makes with the CSI Weirdville when she discovers a flatworm wriggling around inside the dead guy. Elsewhere, blue-collar guys are doing unpleasant work, finding a breach in the screen to a sewer when one of them gets nabbed by something just like poor Dmitri did. Again, an attempt to pull out, but this time he gets out of the water, with a really strange wound, though. At the hospital, he's complaining about a bad taste in his mouth, which could be a result of that wound, or perhaps because he was drowning in sewer water. So Mulder was called in since he's investigating sewer stuff in the area, and this wound is almost like a bite. The guy figures somebody just flushed a snake, but the bite doesn't look quite right for a snake. And speaking of odd things, Mulder gets a call out of the blue from a mysterious man, telling him he has a friend at the FBI, and then hanging up. And sometimes they just call up and listen to the sweet sound of his voice and wonder if it can ever go back to the way it was before. Mulder meets with Scully for the part of the show where the audience is let in on how this stuff normally operates before we get into the X-Files territory. In 1947 they found the remains of an unknown craft. Some say it was a weather balloon. Others say that Chewbacca got shit-faced and crashed into a mountain on a bet. That way we have the foundation so we know where they're going when they go into whatever weird thing is going on this week. Well, this time they're talking about flatworms, the fluke to be specific. It infects 40 million people around the world. It's a parasite that causes things like schistosomiasis and other diseases, a long list of symptoms, including calcification of the bladder. Yeah, that's the kind of weird symptom I wish I would have been creative enough to make up. And indeed, a symptom I wish I had made up. Apparently, none of these describe the way this poor guy died. They don't know the cause, but they do know that a single fluke just couldn't kill a healthy man. For extra creepy, Scully describes the way that the fluke feeds, and that description matches the wound that poor sewer schmuck has on his back. What she doesn't add is the actual fact that the flatworm poops out of its own mouth. They do not show that in this, and there's a good reason, because anyone who would enjoy seeing that is the kind of person who refers to the human centipede as that snooty art film. We soon see said poor schmuck squirting toothpaste into his mouth in a way that would be consistent with a man who has a nasty monster growing inside of him. Or who swallowed a bunch of sewage. I mean, if that were me, I'd be making mouthwash cocktails until my tongue was crying. But it might be something else, because soon the guy pukes up a fluke that goes scurrying down the drain. Freedom! Mulder heads down to the sewer treatment plant to check things out when the plot takes an unexpected turn. Charlie, he's one of the employees there, is out enjoying a smoke when he hears something in the water, and terrified runs over to call the foreman. But he's not grabbed by the monster and made the latest victim. No, he uses his knowledge of the place to trap the creature in a transparent pipe, showing us in full glory the Fluke Man. This sets up a rather unique situation. We have the monster. We captured it alive. And we're halfway through the episode, so we can address the question that goes back to the pilot. How does the legal justice system handle the crazy shit that shows up in these X-File cases? But first, a clue! Someone slips a newspaper under Scully's door that includes the story of the Russian ship, and she connects the body to the missing Dmitri. Having gotten that, we see that the Fluke Man has been taken into custody and put into a holding cell in a psychiatric hospital because... what the hell do you do when you capture a monster that looks like a man? Animal control might not work if that Rise of the Planet of the Apes movie taught us anything, and he can't immediately put it in prison because he'd never survive with a mouth made for sucking, right? So we'll put it in here where we put all our mentally ill, and then we'll prank the visitors. Ah, yes, this next fellow thinks he's a suction monster. Oh my God, look at that thing! Stop it! Stop it! Don't encourage him! Frank, please sit down and get back to your art therapy. So Mulder writes up the report on how the homicide suspect is in fact a 5.5-foot tall worm man.
Everything looks in order?
Yes. You should know that bastardization of the natural order should have a Z in it, not an S, and this calls for a semicolon, but otherwise it's a good report. Now, if you don't mind, I have to get back to work on People v. the Lord of All Lies. Skinner admits that he already had a chance to process this craziness earlier when he talked to the prosecutor about what the hell to do with this thing.
The Justice Department has asked the suspect be transferred to an institution for a full psychiatric evaluation.
Have I jumped the tracks or something? Because this has become less like an X-Files monster of the week and more like a Batman villain. On learning that sewer worker with the worm loogie's dead, Mulder's angry because the X-Files was shut down.
Agent Scully and I might have been able to save that man's life, but you shut us down.
I know. This should have been an X-File. We all take our orders from someone, Agent Mulder.
That line actually has a double meaning. I mean, first, the obvious, that he shut down the X-Files only because he was ordered to. But it also implies that Mulder's on this case because Skinner was told to put him on the case. Hence the explanation of why he'd put him on something that the FBI would normally not bother with. It wasn't a punishment. It was for Mulder to help vindicate himself. This will nicely explain how Mulder can keep winding up assigned to cases that would have normally been X-Files. Even though it's technically shut down, someone is still ensuring that Mulder is working on them. What follows is one of those things about speculative fiction that makes those outside the genre, well, laugh at people like me. Because we on the one hand have to suspend disbelief about the comic book science involved in the Fluke Man, yet I can't help but wonder what the hell these people are thinking by putting said Fluke Man into a van strapped to a gurney with only the driver to keep an eye on it. The thing about SF, though, is that it should be, what would it be like if... some crazy thing, and then we see what happens. Discussing what to do with the Fluke Man is a great example of that. No just having it escape and everyone who saw it being discredited. No gunning it down, the body's never seen again. We catch it alive. What happens next? So sending what probably 99% of the entire world would see as a monster with nobody there to keep an eye on it, that's just silly. So that's why, okay, Worm Man, I'll go along with that. The show totally disregarding safety? Yeah, what the hell? First principles, officer. Simplicity. Read Marcus Aurelius. Of each particular thing ask, what is it in itself? What is its nature? What does he do, this man you seek? That was Silence of the Lambs. Kind of reminds me of Lecter. I just like to say crazy things sometimes without doing the Janeway voice. Anyway, sure enough, the creature that's wet and may or may not possess bones is not likely to be held for long, and the worm manages to hold on to your butts, worm its way out. Eventually it kills the driver and is free to go hide in this outhouse toilet. I'm going to be generous and assume that that's an outhouse. Otherwise, if the worm can fit in there and hide, it's some kind of TARDIS. The next morning, a sanitation truck sucks it out and brings it back to the treatment plant, but luckily, dogs tracked it to the outhouse, and Mulder figures out its clever and icky plan. But first, there's another call from the mysterious man to tell Mulder that his success is necessary in order to ensure that the X-Files are reinstated. That myth-arc stuff out of the way, Mulder can get back to the fluke man. Scully warns that the biting and puking are part of a new and disgusting circle of life. The fluke man's way of breeding, see, it's a love bite. So they really need to stop him before he knocks up another unsuspecting sewer worker who's been saving himself for marriage. Mulder and the foreman head down there to the same spot that guy was attacked to stop it from getting away. But as expected, the foreman falls in and is attacked. Somehow he manages to survive repeated attacks, though, and the fluke man is chopped in half by Mulder. But now the question is, where did it come from?
Dissection and analysis indicates reproductive and physiological cross-trading.
That's cross-traiting, not cross-training. The fluke man hasn't been hitting the gym or anything.
It was born in a primordial soup of radioactive sewage.
Stupid Chernobyl, making monsters and ruining New Jersey. Still, some experts believe that the Chernobyl incident... No, that really doesn't do it justice, does it? The disaster... No, that doesn't work either. The clusterfuck to end all clusterfucks, yes, wound up being a key factor in the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Had that not happened, perhaps the Soviet Union and the United States could have wound up in war at some point and maybe wound up nuking the planet in the process. So, if you think about that, the thing only happened because people deliberately turned off every safety system in the place, even the one that said, no, really, don't turn this off, for real, I don't even know why we have this switch. That thing. That nuclear disaster may have averted nuclear war. Historical irony, or is it time travelers coming to our rescue once again? Like when they shot Kennedy or turned George Washington's teeth to wood so that he could defeat the Golden Age Green Lantern. You never know. While the mysterious stranger is part of the myth arc, I don't think his 2 brief scenes make it required viewing, so I'm going to give this a stamp of recommended. It's an interesting, spooky story. The fluke man, like I said, is comic book science, a radioactive fusion of 2 creatures separated by 500 million years of evolution. But if you're willing to swallow it, the story's good fun. The fluke man's upper body survived in the pipe, but aside of a headline in an Inquirer-style magazine, it never returned again, although it remains a popular franchise monster with the fans. The fluke man actually went on to write for the series, believe it or not. Of course, if he was a leech, he would have become a producer. The mysterious stranger will return in next month's X-Files review, Sleepless.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
560,000 people a day call my office on the porcelain telephone.